Think tank Imani Ghana is accusing the National Communications Authority of doling out a whopping $3.5 million for a consumer cellular mobile satisfaction survey that should cost a few thousands of cedis. Executive Director of Imani, Franklin Kojo, says the survey is not only a cook-up scheme, but the amount involved in the research was completely outrageous. Policy Focus won the bid to conduct the survey on behalf of NCA, but the final report of the research has generated a huge uproar. Head of Consumer and Corporate Affairs of the NCA, Nana Dufie Bedu, says 13,800 respondents were sampled for the survey. The survey is to improve monitoring on quality service delivery by the telcos. But Imani says the supposed research could easily have been conducted in the country's university without incurring anything close to $3.5 million. According to him, Imani spent about 30,000 cedis conducting a similar survey only last year, and for NCA to sink $3.5 million into such a survey is completely unacceptable. The Tema Oil Refinery lost petroleum products worth over 700,000 Ghana cedis to last week's fire on one of its pipelines. The estimate does not capture the damage caused to the pipeline and the lives lost. The refinery, meanwhile, says it is stepping up measures to ensure areas close to the pipelines are made safe for operations. These officials tell Joy News will include beefing up security at both night and day around the pipelines to clamp down on illegal activities in the area.
The assurance comes after one of the 14-inch pipelines at the refinery went up in flames, resulting in the death of one person and injury to 3 others. Officials at the refinery explain initial investigations revealed that there was a leakage on the 5-kilometer stretch of pipeline transporting naphtha around midday, which later caught fire. Public Relations Manager Abaloku says the tragedy has been traced to encroachment on the pipeline by a refuse dump there.
People tend to throw their rubbish over the wall, and we don't know whether they are combustible material or not. I mean, all you need is a source of fire, and then if there's a leakage at all, then fire goes off. On our rounds, the day after, that is what we discovered, that some of the companies were putting their rubbish over the wall. And there was a particular point where rubbish had gathered so much, and there was this, it was burning.
Some 300 metric tons of naphtha amounting to $280,000 was lost as a result of the fire. She further outlined the refinery is collaborating with stakeholders to ensure precautionary measures are put in place to ensure the areas close to the pipelines are safe.
We have increased the number of police, the security men who are on the line, who patrol the line, just to ensure that they ward off any persons who may want to, use that pathway. We have gotten to know that people smoke weed and all sorts in the area, which is not, good. So we've gotten the support to help us, clear the area of such people, so that the pipelines are safe and the refinery, ultimately, their own lives.
Repair works have meanwhile begun on the 5.6-kilometer pipeline. Matilda Pamagan for Joy News, Tema.
The current economic challenges which have resulted in the cedi's depreciation and rising inflation are now having impact on the housing market. According to a new report by real estate research firm Housing Data, during the first quarter of 2014, housing prices have experienced an overall hike of between 18.5% and 25%. A year ago, in the Dawenya district of Tema, a 2-bedroom semi-detached and 3-bedroom detached houses were sold for $66,500 and $86,000 as compared with the first quarter of 2014, selling at $85,000 and $105,000 respectively, representing an increase of 23.5% and 19%. In the Kaswa area of the central region, a 2-bedroom semi-detached and a 3-bedroom detached houses which went for $35,000 and $55,000 during the first quarter of 2013 were being sold for $42,000 and $66,000 respectively in the first quarter of 2014. In the Dodowa district also, a 2-bedroom semi-detached and a 3-bedroom detached houses were selling at $72,000 and $120,000 in the first quarter of 2013 were now being sold at 90,000 cedis and $150,000 during the first quarter of 2014, representing an increase of 25% in the price. So you can understand why a lot of Ghanaians may not be able to buy homes. Now, 4 persons sadly have died in thunder strikes during a rainstorm which also displaced over 1,400 persons that hit some parts of the Garu Timpane district of the Upper East region. Upper East correspondent Albert Story has the rest of the story.
1,000 homes were destroyed, displacing its inhabitants. 5 schools had their roofs ripped off, while several economic trees, including shea nuts, were also destroyed. 2 communities, Gabire and Garu, have been cut off from each other as the major road linking the 2 communities have been washed away. At Gukragu in Garu, about 10 high-tension electrical poles had fallen, posing danger to residents. District Chief Executive for Garu Timpani, Albert Akuka, during a tour of the affected areas, expressed concern about access to health facilities by residents, since most communities have been cut off, but assured residents of government assistance.
As an assembly, so far we are providing some relief in the form of food stuff and some used clothing that we had in our NADMO stores, but that is woefully inadequate. Therefore, we are providing that relief, and we are calling on our development partners and other philanthropists to come to the aid of the district to help us provide some relief. Meanwhile, we are taking up sensitization and education seriously.
District National Disaster Management Organization Coordinator Grace Awini expressed optimism help will reach the displaced soon.
Well, general disaster, we don't have anything in our office in the form of relief. We don't have anything. Normally what we do is when it happens, we prepare the reports and we look round. We send the reports to the region, to the national level, and appealing to them for relief for the victims. But what I want to suggest, I've been discussing it with my DC, it is important that the district assemblies try to put aside something small, at least even if it is 1%, at least of their common fund or any funds, so that we can get some little relief in stock in preparation for eventualities like this. As we talk, the district assembly has nothing, NADMO has nothing. And so we have sent reports out. We have sent to some NGOs, we have sent to Accra, and then we are still putting together some more reports to other philanthropists to see whether we can get assistance for our victims.
Thank you very much.
Albert Sori's report from Garu Timpani.
Now our headlines in AM News today. The World Economic Forum begins today in Abuja, Nigeria. More than 1,000 leaders from business, government, civil society and academia are expected to participate. Housing Data Center indicates about 85% of Ghanaians cannot buy a house. Ghana's sea levels and temperature are rising as researchers hint of its danger for the country. They are calling on government to double efforts at tackling climate change. My name is Kimini Nyamani Amano. Thank you very much for staying through the AM News, but the show continues.
All it takes is letting go. It's only when you do that you truly win. That's when you experience the magic of each moment. Like it's the first time. All it takes is letting go. A great man once said, "The world is won by those who let go." At Star Assurance, we take care of the things you care about, so you are free to be all you can be. Let go and let Star. Talk to us today. Star Assurance, your solid partner.
We all know how important good nutrition is to grow up big and strong. Not only is cowbell milk enriched with 28 vitamins and minerals, it's also boosted by the 5 most important vitamins, which we call Vita-Rich.
It's got vitamin A for good eyesight development. It's got vitamin C to help fight infections. It's got vitamin D and calcium to help build strong bones and teeth. It's got vitamin E to help with body protection. And it's got vitamin K for general well-being and immunity.
For good health and vitality, only cowbell with Vita-Rich puts you on the fast track.
Good morning, my name is Baba Tando. Thanks to Cowbell for sponsoring our sports segment on the AM show. Now, yesterday it was Ryan Giggs who dominated the headlines when Manchester United went into action against Hull City. He started the game first as a coach and then ended as a player, playing his final game for Manchester United against Hull City.
To Old Trafford as Manchester United concluded their home campaign with a clash against FA Cup finalists Hull City. While the curtains drawn one player's Old Trafford career, it was the dawn of a new era as interim boss Ryan Giggs handed Premier League debuts to Tom Lawrence and James Wilson. It was almost a dream debut for Wilson, who saw his shot blocked with just 2 minutes on the clock. United thought they were in for a penalty after Mino Figueroa brought down Adnan Januzaj. The appeals, though, fell on deaf ears. United fans would have no doubt been impressed at their debutant's performances, as Lawrence saw a shot deflected over. The Theatre of Dreams then rose to its feet to salute a hero, as Vidic replaced Phil Jones after 21 minutes. In saluting a former hero, the Stretford end welcomed a new one, as Wilson handed his side the lead.
That is the stuff that dreams are made of. A goal for the 18-year-old on his Manchester United debut, a moment he will never forget.
United took a 1-goal lead into the break. The United youngsters continued to impress with the resumption of the second half. Januzaj again the orchestrator, and Wilson was left with a simple tap-in.
And Wilson! Well, it does not get better than that.
The Tigers had been near spectators for most of the encounter, but pulled one back through a speculative strike from Matty Fryatt. Giggs brought himself on for his 963rd appearance in a Manchester United shirt, but there was no room for sentiment from the Tigers, as David Myler asked questions of David De Gea. The result was put beyond doubt as Robin van Persie fired past the Hull goalkeeper in a goal that Giggs had a major role in. 3-1 his outings ended as Vidic waved goodbye to Old Trafford, a venue he called home since 2006.
All right, So congratulations to Manchester United there, and also to Ryan Giggs there. His final match for Manchester United. Ryan Giggs says he would want to proceed to take further his coaching career, which means that he has to go back to coaching school and come back a better coach. Probably for United sometime, who knows. But let's find out the final round of fixtures that are coming up in the English Premier League. Right on your screens, Sunderland are taking on West Bromwich Albion, and then Manchester City, they take on Aston Villa. And then on Sunday, we would have all the matches all the last matches for the remaining part of the season, or for the rest of the season. So be informed that these fixtures are coming up later today, and then on Sunday we have all the fixtures. We have the final round of fixtures for the 2013-2014 English Premier League season. Fixtures also coming up later this week in the Spanish La Liga. Here are the fixtures that we should expect. Real Valladolid are taking on Real Madrid. Remember that Real Madrid are still in contention for the La Liga title. Even though Atletico Madrid lost last weekend, they still are somewhat in contention for the La Liga trophy as well. But it's Real Madrid who take on Real Valladolid later tonight. And then there's also going to be some action in France. Let's check out the Ligue 1 fixtures coming up later today. AS Monaco take on Guingamp, and then Paris Saint-Germain, they take on Stade Rennes. Remember that something very interesting happened over the weekend with Guingamp. Remember that Guingamp actually is a team that was set up by farmers, and so last Saturday the supporters decided to go to their stadium to support Guingamp in tractors. So instead of driving cars or taking planes or trains, the supporters decided to enter the stadium with tractors. And by train, usually it takes 4 hours to get to the stadium, but some actually started the journey a day before and slept in their tracks, and then got to the stadium the next day. So that's the latest with Guingamp, who go away to AS Monaco, and then Paris Saint-Germain, they take on Stade Rennes in the French Ligue 1. And so with all of these making the headlines for today, we'll end it here for this morning. We'll be back on News Today this afternoon with more headlines. My name is Baba Tando. Thanks to Cowbell for sponsoring us.
We all know how important good nutrition is to grow up big and strong. Not only is cowbell milk enriched with 28 vitamins and minerals, it's also boosted by the 5 most important vitamins, which we call Vita-Rich.
It's got vitamin A for good eyesight development. It's got vitamin C to help fight infections. It's got vitamin D and calcium to help build strong bones and teeth. It's got vitamin E to help with body protection. And it's got vitamin K for general well-being and immunity.
For good health and vitality, only cowbell with Vita-Rich puts you on the fast track.
Well, thanks again, and we've been giving you the latest news updates as well as sports, and we know that, well, it's the climax of the various leagues, not only around Africa but also elsewhere in Europe and Asia, just because the World Cup is coming. Are you going to Brazil? Okay. Let's tell you what we'll be talking about this morning. For many of you who live in Ghana's capital, Accra, and who commute between Labadi and also El Wak, there's a construction that is ongoing. As a result of that, we have continuous traffic congestion on the route.
All right, so just before you leave home, we want to tell you what the traffic situation is, and our colleague Abigail Adumakuentri is on standby now.
Okay, so Abigail will soon be on your screens, and here she is.
So I should be in short.
Well, so as you can see, the first picture or the first scene of the traffic situation just around the intersection on the ongoing route where we have construction of the route just between Labadi here in Accra, right through the frontage of the Bema Camp and the El Wak Sports Stadium, and that also leads to 37 airports depending on where you're going, cantonment and all those communities. So very soon we'll be having a lot of updates from Abigail Adumakuentri, who will be giving us a lot more updates and activities as to what's taking place by way of not only video but also audio.
El Wak to T Junction, where there are some construction works ongoing. Now, if you can see on the screens, because of the construction works, just a little traffic is piling up here. But normally you would have heavy traffic. This particular road is noted for heavy vehicle traffic, and that's why there are construction works ongoing to
Well, so Abigail Adumakuentri will be back on your screens and will give us a lot more updates on the subject of what really is happening on the construction routes. Well, we have from Labadi to the El Wak Sports Stadium, that very intersection that leads to airport, and also 37 military hospital area. And for many of you who will branch towards the left, that's cantonment and the other adjoining areas.
Okay, so if you're coming from Teshinungwa, thereabouts, traffic is not so bad. You still can use the main road, stick to the main road, no dodgy. You might meet a lot of traffic there instead. So back on your screens, pictures there, this is the main, if you like, from the trade fair straight up to El Wak Sports Stadium, that will be the road that's on your screen right now. Our colleague Abigail is on standby again. Will share with us a few things as and when that becomes possible. But you're still watching the AM show. We're live on the Joy News channel on your multi-TV. Good morning if you're now joining us. You've missed a lot, but not to worry. There's still a lot more things to come. But it's International Tell Your Crush Day. So if you have a crush on someone that you have not been able to say, it's a beautiful excuse. Let the person know. And I've been reading about it. They say it really doesn't matter if the person doesn't equally like you. It's okay, just tell them.
Well, so that's how it works, and after this very brief, we would also be looking at what the stories are on the front and back pages of the newspapers. But again, the traffic situation that leads from Labadi Trade Fair area right through the Labadi Villa section of Bema Camp, the Congo Junction, that is the entrance into Bema Camp, and the area leading right through the El Wak Sports Stadium, the airport intersection 37 and cantonment. So we're bringing you the traffic situation there, and you can see that very scene not too far off. We have the offices of the Department of Urban Roads, the Greater Accra Region office is around that area as well. So we're just giving you a gist of what really is happening around Ghana's capital, Accra, and how especially motorists who tend to commute to and from work are been affected by the current situation and how also they are coping. Okay, so if you're within those areas, you're experiencing the traffic or you have experienced it before, you just have to get interactive. You just send us those pictures through the platforms we have, social media pages we have on Facebook and on Twitter as well. Join Us on TV is a page on Facebook. Please load or tag us with those pictures. We'll be very happy to have them.
All right, but we know there's a big forum in Nigeria as well. We'll be giving you more updates on that as well. We also know that still there are some over 200 girls who are missing. And now we're hearing that the U.S. is intervening.
Yes.
They're giving some experts to help in the search for the girls.
But that's also because the Nigerian president actually considered that we really needed help and has accepted that very help.
I feel it's come rather too late.
And not too far from the area. We have 8 girls who have been abducted in the last couple of hours. And so the World Economic Forum for Africa is taking place in Nigeria's administrative capital, Abuja. And we're giving you a lot more update from the World Economic Forum right here on the AM show. But now let's get the latest update on the traffic situation from Abigail Adumakwintri on the Labadi Elwak Road.
Works ongoing, and this road, which is noted for heavy vehicular traffic, is being expanded to ensure that the traffic on the road lessens. Now, if you can see, there's not too much traffic on the road this morning as we would have it, in spite of the construction works. And although it's gradually building up, the vehicles are moving slowly, and the construction works have reached a point, and if you can see behind me, some culverts have been constructed, and some gutters are being constructed. And if I can analyze the road myself, the works have not gone that far. There's so much work to be done, and the road itself has not been tarred, and there are lots of blocks.
Abigail Adumakwintri, right?
Yes.
I wanted to say Adumaku Abigail Entry. Okay.
Yeah, mix it. You have a crush on her?
Who?
All right, so we'll bring you what's making headlines in the newspapers now. Okay, so Roland is starting off with the Daily Graphic newspaper.
Thank you. I crashed for the day. And couple in trouble. And when I first saw the story, I said, I didn't cry on my yes, that they have to deserve a front page from the Daily Graphic. Apparently, we're being told that they swindled supply companies to the tune of some 2 million Ghana cedis. That's huge. And so that's why the editors of the Daily Graphic, they decided to put this very couple. We have Saharatu Adams and Moses Amano on the front page. Rush for biometric health insurance cards, lack of cohesion, bane of Africa's integration. 3 private power producers collaborate to boost electricity supply. So those are the other stories we have on the front page. The back page has a story. WHO support our wins to align with vehicle protective kits. And so we're on the back page now. Suspected car snatchers grabbed. Car retrieved so far, we've been told. So those are the stories we have on the front and back pages of the paper, the Daily Graphic.
And I can do the Ghanaian Times now. 45th Offshore Technology Confab opens. CEO of Hearts interdicted. World Bank staff testifies in GDAC case. Accused isn't a consultant. And 55 arrested for attempting to take over toll collection. That story you can find on page 4 of the Ghanaian Times. Back page, Black Stars to play South Korea now. So Ghana will now play South Korea instead of Honduras in their final friendly match before the 2014 World Cup. Okay, so that revelation was made by the Black Stars assistant coach Maxwell Kunedu. And Powers join Banco to demand more. They're asking for some 50,000 Ghana cedis each. Okay, so they're most likely not to get that amount of money. I don't think we're so crazy about this bout anymore, but that's it for the Ghanaian Times.
Front page of the Daily Guide. Pono video hits Akwetia. Ashanti chief is NDC. JJ's boy attacks MPP. The quote is, they share we cocaine. So those are the stories we have on the front page of the Daily Guide.
I have a Chronicle, and if you've been following Mr. Kwesi Opong Fosu, I'll tell you who he is. He's actually the Metropolitan Chief Executive for the Sekondi Takoradi. He's been in the news for allegedly taking some 30,000 Ghana cedis. He was supposed to travel with it, but he did not. He went to Tema. Okay. Okay, no, so Mr. Kwesi Opong Fosu, okay, so that would not be him. Let me get the story properly. That person is Anthony Richard. He's Captain Anthony Richard Kujo. He's been accused of swindling his own assembly of some 30,000 Ghana cedis. He's denied in some quarters. In other places, he said that he received $1,400 and not 30,000 Ghana cedis. Okay, so that's the sector minister, rather, Mr. Kwesi Opong Fosu, on the front page of the Chronicle. Also, Nigeria cuts gas supply to Ghana again. I was listening to the VRA head of communications, and he denied that gas supply has not been cut from Nigeria. Rather, we have some equipment that are down, that are not working. We're getting enough gas, we're told. It's just our machines.
All right. Energy experts. The new crusading guide, Inside the Hidden Gated Community, Slum Sex Lords Part 2. Right. Crusading Guide has begun its serializing investigative report again, this time on sex inside somewhere, a house in Bonafo. Direct aid chalk success, and the report is revealing forged minister signature embarrasses Ghana. Energy experts have been quoted to be saying.
Okay, so I have the Daily Searchlight, but I'm not going to review it because I think that some of the headlines are not, you know, exactly good to be reviewed, so I'm going to skip that. I'm going to go to the Daily Heritage. The Daily Heritage newspaper, 4.4 million Ghana cedis payments. Pops up a judgment debt commission. Eastern Railway lines dead. Our MPs has run away. That's some angry chiefs saying that. Please grab the paper and read the detail. Back page of the Heritage. Neil Armstrong interdicted over allegations of wrongdoing. Black Stars to face South Korea on June 9, and malfeasance has shocked Hearts board. That's according to Dr. Nyaho Tamaklo, and it comes with a photograph of himself. And that's it for the Daily Heritage.
The front page of the Enquirer has a story. 6.36 million children in child labor are now a year revealed, saying some as young as 8 years. That's frightening. 8 billion Ghana cedi Tema hospital mortuary project abandoned as contractor vanishes from site, and Ghana must seek economic salvation, being attributed to the Volta Regional Minister, Madam Helen Ntoso. And back page, and I tell you, the sports editor of the Enquirer is a fan of boxing. Always boxing will be there, even if football is there as well. Why Mayweather will easily win a rematch against Maidana, and Manchester United will have place for coach, according to Steve Bruce, who himself is a Manchester United legend.
Alright, the Ghanaian Observer now. Deep cracks in Ashanti NDC Mark President store. Regional chairman cited over plot against regional minister. To sack or not to sack? Tekbe NDC communicators enter fray. Okay, so we are very greedy people. That's attributed to a minister. And it comes with a picture of Alhaji Amidu Sulemani, who's the Minister for Roads and Highways. Is this what he said? Please grab the paper. Back page, Derek Boateng ponders his Fulham future. So this is a Ghanaian international. He plays for Fulham. I guess when he was going in, he went in with the motive to play for a first... how do we put that? First team, exactly. Now he's found himself, the club has been relegated. So what's he going to do?
I think he can always get suitors. That is if he, I think he's still active enough to play. And the Daily Dispatch, EC's 2012 Volta figures are correct. See the back page for the full story. Ghana among 5 top economies in sub-Saharan Africa. Again, the story on the back page. So if you want to read, please.
The Insight, Catholic bishops speak out on youth unemployment, SADA and VAT. Will be very interesting reading. Catholic bishops speak out. Yesterday I had the General Secretary of the Christian Council and then a Muslim cleric as well. And it was really good. It's good that we have our religious leaders speaking on the everyday things that concern the nation. Muslims name mosque after Jesus. Really? Okay. That's it for the Insights.
Front page of the Herald. The ordinary side of Ibrahim Mahama. I've been told that there's a picture of him eating Tiozafi somewhere. Multi-millionaire eats Tiozafi at Mamobi Chop Bar regularly.
So why is this making a front page headline? I mean, this one was
I don't know
on
why
Facebook.
somebody's got to eat, you take a picture of
so
him.
So let's not review it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's very trivial. This is not what we want to hear in the morning. So
right.
We're moving on.
Okay. So the next paper, the Graphic Sports, I guess our preparations for the World Cup now should be in full gear. And so Stars for Camp in Florida. The stories on the back page. For many of you who love the Black Stars and would want them to succeed, please. Asamoah makes it double with Juve, his second title in a row as he joined Juventus from Udinese. 50,000 each or no fight. And Mamavi Ouzu Abwajes darling Bukum Banku. Who is going to fight Aite Powers. Mamavi had a ticket the first time when the fight was announced. That's a secret. I don't have to tell you.
Alright, so now you know what's making headlines on the front and back pages of the major newspapers. Go to the newsstands and grab the papers. Don't just go stand there and look through the headlines and walk away. Buy them, read them, and keep them. We'll be back with a whole lot more. It's still the AM show.
Just stay on. We'll be right back.
What can you do with your Mixi? And you? What about you? Mixi milk powder is rich in vitamins and minerals, essential for a healthy lifestyle. It is smooth and creamy. Mixi milk powder. Health is a delicious step away. And now, introducing the creamy Mixi coffee.
Every Saturday, I demand on your behalf the bare facts behind the major issues that dominated the news in Ghana in the week. The biggest drivers of the news show up here because they know discerning people moving abroad choose News 5.
One could almost see some political interference in that work.
Even in mediocrity, we are last. Your facts are not necessarily always correct.
The NDC has made phenomenal investments in educational infrastructure.
We believe we have a good case, so it doesn't really matter before we appear.
We have had worse cases of criticism, and I'm not going to cite them now unless I'm provoked.
Newsfile is incontrovertibly the most intellectual and your most authoritative news analysis platform on radio, TV, and online, digging and dissecting all the topical issues, shaking up all the parties, shaping the national discourse to drive real national development. Newsfile, every Saturday, 9 a.m. online and on TV and on radio.
Have you ever thought of how unpredictable life can be? We all design our dreams and future as blissful and flawless as possible. For example, we plan to go to school, get a job, make a family, build or buy a home, and live a comfortable life. But what is not guaranteed us is security and peace of mind. For life itself has in its hands the mystery of the unexpected. But no matter your dreams, we at Star Life Assurance believe that you and your dreams should not be terminated by the unexpected. That is why with integrity, empathy, and passion for excellence, we protect you with unique financial security solutions so you don't fade away when the unexpected stray your way. Star Life Assurance, your financial anchor.
Let's start the discussions. I have in the studio Seth Kwame Ichampong, the Member of Parliament for Empire. So thanks for joining me.
Thank you, my brother.
How are you?
I'm all right.
Okay. He's a financier of the MPP as well.
Oh,
so
my goodness.
No, you're not in that category. Okay. So he's a Member of Parliament and financier and a member too of the MPP. So
right. Thank you.
Now let's look at what the stories are on the front page. And we're being told that there's now a rush for biometric health insurance cards, but also just because some few days ago, well, the National Insurance Identification Authority said they were now going to do re-registration of cards, card holders, and they just also wanted to do an update of what had already been done. Looking at what the exercise has been so far, the difficulties that those who had registered have gone through are still going through. Is the new directive the best or the most prudent action to take? Seth?
Right. I still have a couple of issues when it comes to the re-registration exercise. Reasons are that, remember ourselves, in 2012, just around the same time it happened, and people were of great concern in that we're going to go into a major electioneering exercise. And one of the reasons for having getting yourself on the register was at least having an ID as a Ghanaian. And one of the qualifications, as the law has specified, is the health insurance cards. And we believed, and I don't need to belabor this point, that it was being misused at the time, because if you looked at our borders, major border towns were where this exercise was going on increasingly, and it was a source of worry. We don't need to discriminate amongst ourselves as Ghanaians, but we have to ensure that the right things are done. Mind you, in a couple of months, again, we're going to have another exercise, what we may call the midterm elections. We're going to have assembly elections. Why and how do we just oppose some of these things? We need to really get it properly done. We are the same people. Why is it that at certain off-season, it is not seen, and then when another exercise is coming up, then it's hardly seen? We are aware that the EC is organizing itself for these elections and making recruitment and all of that. Some of these things need to be done devoid of mention that people would want to take undue advantage over other competitors. I don't think it is something we need to encourage.
Now, especially when the president had said that perhaps we need to have an amalgamation of all these identification card authorities or institutions. So, i.e., we have the National Health Insurance Authority cards, We have perhaps also for the passports and also the national identification cards. Then it's become more prudent for us to have one single database for which we can have a lot more access.
I think that is more the reason why we're putting up a national data center, which is just very close to Parliament. And it is rightful so. We have said this in Parliament, that the duplications are many and it's not helpful. You have a driver's license, which is a biometric. We have a voter registration, which is a biometric. We're having health insurance, which is going to be a biometric. I mean, we have a national ID, which is also a biometric. At least we could synchronize them. But there are some of them you cannot necessarily put all together. But once we have a data bank where you can access information on every person, it is advisable. For instance, a driver's license, I don't think you can sync it with the national ID, but you could make passport, which is a traveling document, an option, because you don't necessarily have to always flash your passport as an ID everywhere in Ghana. It is just an ID that enables you cross your border, get into a different environment to be identified as an origin of this country. And in that vein, I really fully support it. That is a matter which is already on the table, but we are hoping that the institutions would have, you see, it's about protecting turfs. That is how some of us see it. Some of these agencies believe they're so jealous of their turfs. And then for us, it is the good of the country. Why must we spend so much money for one agency to set up a whole system of biometric registration, whereas we are using the same country, the same data, the same people, and then can't they sit and then synchronize and help us move forward? I think that is it's a very useful suggestion which has been on the table for a long time. I'm not surprised the president is also championing it now today, that the buck stops with him. And so we should look at it as a country, because at the end of the day, the cost comes back to us as a people. Your taxes, my taxes, is what is spent in projecting some of these fine programs. And so for success in these projects, let us see how best we can allow some prudence, so that it is not necessarily seen as one person sitting somewhere doing his thing in his corner, another sitting in another area doing his corner. So we can all put all hands on deck and help Mother Ghana grow.
Crucially, if we have one-stop database, how is that an advantage for us, whether for transactions or for any other activity?
First and foremost, crime will reduce, because, for instance, if they have my finger data, wherever that bank is, whichever agency is assessing it, since it's centralized, you can all pool. It's just like sitting in an office which is networked and all operations are centralized, and you are using a common printer. If you press a button on your desk, it goes to the printer and then you have it. Same way, if you have a data bank sitting there for all of us, you may be sitting in your office here and then you can just walk into your server. Once you can have access to it, the gateway, you can draw information out of it and it will help you. It is a common source of information for all agencies, not necessarily security alone, even in medics, so that a person who is forwarding an identity as a health attendant and is not having the requisite data and impersonation, all these things will help us reduce some of these crime or threats which do not enable growth and development of our system. So for some of us, I believe it is high time we got those things. I mean, how would a person be arrested at an immigration point when he's entering another jurisdiction? Similarly, that is how they do it, because once they have your data. I mean, bio data you can't rub off. It is your bio data. And each and every person, as how God created us, have a unique bio data. And so that is the modern way. Technology have helped society, have helped the world to improve upon data gathering.
If we take a look at it currently, perhaps we started some years ago the identification system. If we had continuously perhaps also consolidated what was being done there, could we have progressed more forcefully than we have?
A lot of us believed that the exercise of the national identification was going to be strengthened. Because if we had focused in strengthening that, once it's been there for long, I mean, and it's a worry to some of us, because if you look at how long they have been available and how far they have come, and yet they still have bottlenecks. Bottom line, when you meet with them in committees and they are expressing the challenges, it comes down back to the normal mantra everybody talks about: money, finance. And it is sad, because if we are successful in the National ID project, I'm sure they would have had all data, and it was going to be repetitive, something which was going to be ongoing, and it wasn't going to stop, because once a child is born and attains certain criteria, because it was backed by law, they would have their IDs, and then we would then develop thereafter. And I believe that using that ID alone is more enough an ID for any person to walk to any polling station on any day to exercise their franchise, because that signifies and identifies you as an individual and an origin of the land. And it's so unique. So for me, the national ID must be strengthened, and we must ensure that we have the national ID, which nobody can duplicate. But in this era where we still have, because it is not fully fledged, we still have maybe the Electoral Commission going to go ahead to do its own bio data gathering, and then one of the requirements by the law is this matter we raised earlier of the National Health ID, which qualifies you to go in and have yourself registered if you don't have a passport, because it is seen as one of the IDs of the land, just as somebody holding a driver's license. It will stop all these duplications and worries, because somebody, I may believe that it is not a worry, but it is a worry for another person. Must we worry our heads to spend energies discussing this, having this conversation this morning? We should be focusing on how to get some bread and butter for our people, because that's what everybody is looking up to do.
Anyway, so the subject of national identification. Now they say they want to do the re-registration, if not an update, so to speak, of...
But the National Identification Office must be up and doing. I got registered way before I got into Parliament, because my region was one of the regions that started registration early, and I know that most of the people haven't received their cards. I'm in Parliament. Because of that, I refused to duplicate my registration when I got into Parliament, and they came into Parliament to register us. I did not go in there for it. I'm sure by now my card should be ready and it's sitting somewhere, but it's still same old communication matter. How effectively are we communicating amongst ourselves? How are we centralizing collection processes? We need to do a bit more sensitization so that people know that, yes, the cards are available, they are ready, you can come for them. And it is worth, because I have a passport, I have a driver's license, I have a national insurance card, I have several IDs, so I'm not perturbed that everywhere or wherever I go and an ID is requested of me, I can immediately generate one. So I'm not perturbed. But how about others who do not have what I have? How would they go about it? So it is important, and it is very much urgent on the part of the National Identification Authority to move ahead and be more proactive and get citizenry to appreciate the good work they are doing. Because some who do not know will sit back and tell you that we are doing nothing, and it will not be their fault because they don't know.
Okay, now let's take a look at concretely what the way forward should be for whether the policy on the subject itself, but also the institution.
No, to save the country. I mean, today we are all talking about how our economy is the volatility of our economy. And so any prudent measure which we say make us some savings, cost-cutting measures, we have to employ them. Why must we? If we have to invest a lot of money in ensuring that we have all our nationals on a data bank at the National Identification Authority, let us do that. And then we'll stop all these issues, side issues of EC doing her own process, DVLA doing her own process, the National Health Insurance doing her own process, go back to payee systems. Employment is also doing their own data build-up, bio-registration. All these duplications must cease, because the country hasn't got enough money. We don't have such money to spend. on all these exercises. The duplication must cease. And so there must be a clear-cut policy that this is the way forward, and this is the way we have to do it, and we just get it done.
Okay, so we have to move forward on the subject. The president is was on the Ashanti regional tour, or is in the Ashanti region, so to speak. And what do you make of his trip so far? We know that it's generated some level of controversies.
Yeah, it depends on how you would want to look at it. Yes, the president, sometimes when I listen to the president, I think he still thinks he's in the campaign mode, because some of the rhetoric sounds campaign rhetoric. I know he's doing his business, and yes, as a politician like himself who's been in Parliament for 3 terms, 12 years in Parliament, he's cut out for his job. He knows what he's doing. So he may be campaigning, and he's inaugurating and commissioning projects. I mean, for instance, the Mampong Water Works, which funding was secured under the Kufuor administration, the Mills administration commenced the construction, which is now completed, and he went and then commissioned it. And I felt proud that at least governance, which we always say is continuity, has been showcased. And one person starts, another person comes to complete. That is the beauty of democracy. But where it comes up to certain insinuations that no matter how we have it in our local parlance, that no matter how the steps of the chickens dance at the Durbar, it would not excite or impress the hawk. The hawk would at all costs come for the chicken for feed, and implying that no matter what the president does, we in opposition will not be impressed. I will certainly not be impressed, because when a general secretary of the ruling party, after us sitting in Parliament and going through the expenditure patterns of government and citing, for instance, government spending over 100 million on capacity building, and we have what we call Government Assurances Committee as well as the Public Accounts Committee. Government Assurances Committee is supposed to put government on its toes, and to date, as we do budget conversation and we require for certain expenditure patterns, and they are not brought before us, we are chastised that yes, we are doomsayers. We sit back and we say that government, instead of waiting for the auditor and the Minister of Finance, those things are not necessary. The reasons are that we cannot be asked to go against a law we just enacted in the last 3 years, 3 to 4 years, go and amend it. Why? Because today we claim that we are in difficulty. What sort of difficulty are we in? Have we done prudent financial management? Have we had value for money for the enterprises that we have embarked upon? These are some of the germane issues we need to be asking ourselves. What caused us there? What took us there? These are the issues that I believe as a country we have to be focused on. What sent us to where we are today? That is a very crucial matter. But going forward, you want us to go and take what is reserved as 9%. Mind you, in promoting and promulgating this legislation, hot arguments were effected. What were they? We said we have sold cocoa since independence, which predates independence. We've had gold, which predates independence. We have nothing to show. Fortunately, we have gained oil today. So let's look at other models, best practice globally. And we decided to put a legislation which will help posterity to also have something left for them. Hence the Heritage Fund. There is a creation, the Stabilization Fund, where government believes that it requires more funds to be input into the Consolidated Fund as a result of the annual budget funding amount, which ABF, which goes into the Consolidated Fund, which is 70% out of a whooping sales on oil receipts. And then the stabilization is 21%. So it is only, heritage is only 9% reserved. And then we call, and it is just 120 million. Look, if you look into the arrears of government, the 120 million they are asking us to come and drop in the economy is like a drop in an ocean. Let's be more pragmatic. approach in managing the economy. That is what I believe we ought to do. It's not just this, forgive my language, knee-jerk firefighting approach. It won't help us. It won't make progress.
We know that. But also, well, South Africans today, they're voting. They want to elect a new leader, and these are live feeds we're getting from South Africa, courtesy Reuters. And so South Africans in many of their provinces voting. Again, we're being told that according to the leads, the polls generally, well, we have still the ANC leading as far as which of the parties will be up there. And so we'll see how it goes for the South Africans as well. And many of the international networks had been broadcasting this morning about how, well, there had been some concerns raised by a lot more activists over the last couple of days, that especially for many of those black South Africans who had experienced apartheid, many of them still are in the doldrums of poverty, mainly because they don't have the right sort of education, the right sort of technology, and the right sort of expertise and skills. So that's how it is as far as we're concerned. That is, many of them who live outside the main cities of Joburg, Pretoria, Cape Town, etc. And so South Africans wish them all the best. And many of their leaders still currently at the World Economic Forum for Africa that is taking place in Abuja. And Abuja, we all know, is the administrative capital of Nigeria. And well, I've cut you short on the subject. We'll have to go back there. But what do you make of South Africans especially and the effort they've made so far, especially since apartheid?
Oh, I think it's one that is encouraging. It is not all that rosy. It hasn't been all that rosy. There have been internal, frictions with the factions emerging, some even going away. The Malema youth movement, which is now even established itself as a political institution back in South Africa, they've shown leadership. For instance, Nelson Mandela, who was the first president, should exit after being in office for a term. He could have still continued in office if he chose to, but he decided to allow Mbeki to come over. Mbeki stayed over. Zuma is on now. There have been some section, and that is, on one part, has been a success story. If you get into South Africa and you have conversations around, some believe that the economy is not doing well. Until now, South Africa used to lead Africa in terms of sub-Saharan Africa, but in the recent past, after Nigeria's rebasing, where Nigeria is currently, having half $1 trillion GDP base, it has become the biggest brother now in sub-Saharan Africa. That notwithstanding, South Africa has still got enough infrastructure. Comparatively, if you look at infrastructure-wise, the status of South Africa vis-a-vis some of us in West Africa, they are miles ahead of us. And it's more or less a cashless economy. It's using credit systems. It has good infrastructure, road networks. I'm sure hosting of the World Cup also drew them very far in trying to rebuild their city. It's made them spend a lot, and this is some of the reasons why we believe it sent the economy down, because post the World Cup, construction ceased because there was massive construction, capital injection was high, and so employment creation was also high. Post that, it reduced employment creation. And it needs to sit back and do some engineering, re-engineering, to ensure that it is on its sound footing. But it is not that bad.
No, really?
It is not.
Okay, but as far as the last fiscal, I think the last 2 quarters of the last year was concerned, apart from the Ghana cedi, I think South Africa was the major, South Africa's rand was a major currency in Africa that saw the lowest depreciation, then followed by Ghana, etc. And so that also shows you that perhaps the economy is not doing so well. Of course, they have the basic infrastructure and the lives of the people there. Maybe.
So with a little bit of prudence in management, I'm sure they should be able to come back, because that is some of the things. But I hope and pray that leadership will not do as we have always been speaking against, that a few people in leadership enjoy and the majority masses suffer. If that kind of trend sets in, I don't think it is a fully fledged nation that has won itself independently, because there are still factions who do not believe in what is happening. And the crime wave in South Africa, the crime rate is very high, unlike we have here. You can easily be attacked in South Africa. It's not as easy and sound as we have in Ghana when you walk freely on your streets without fear. In South Africa, there are areas you can't just have it easy to walk through. You need to be shepherded by security. And so these are some of the challenges that I believe it is good. They're going to do their best so far, and I'm hoping they would come out clean. Mind you, we have our own observing this exercise which is going on. Former President Kufuor is heading the AU mission. Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo is heading the Commonwealth mission, which are all observer teams in South Africa. And it is good for some of us as Ghanaian leaders and Ghanaians being asked to head missions of globalization and global citizenship to help a brother or a sister country to go through an exercise. It's joy for some of us. It shows the level of competence that society and the global world have in Ghanaians, and I'm glad and I'm happy for such events.
Now, South Africa is still a global leader, but the biggest...
It is still a global leader.
Yes,
I mean, in Sub-Saharan Africa,
yes, the biggest economy.
Yeah, it's the biggest economy. I cannot have anywhere where there are too many business... It is the first time Nigeria is going to host the World Economic Forum. South Africa has hosted it a couple of times, and way ahead of Nigeria. And I've been to Nigeria. I know it's, they're all federal states. South Africa is a federal state. Nigeria is a federal state. They have provinces, just like Nigeria has its states, and then South Africa has got its provinces. So it's similar in terms of nature. However, the people are different.
Yes,
in terms of structures. It's a bit different, and I think South Africa is way ahead in terms of structure than Nigeria. Nigeria would have to...
Even after the rebasing, Nigeria.
After the rebasing, I mean, Nigeria, unlike Ghana, Nigeria is a very big country. Vast country. It has the biggest population in Africa. I mean, if you know Nigeria a little bit, I always tell people, I've never seen a city that moves faster than Lagos. I mean, not even New York. No city moves faster than Lagos. Lagos is active more than is unnecessary. Is beyond imagination. Okay, if you go to Abuja, Abuja is different. That is the federal capital. It's a bit different from what you may see in Lagos. Lagos is still the nerve of Nigeria. It's still the economic capital. After taking the political capital to Abuja, you still see it because there's more activity. There's no business going on in Lagos. It's typical to South Africa, Joburg, and maybe Pretoria. Same. You can't take it away from them.
And especially now that we have the World Economic Forum for Africa taking place in Abuja, what should really be the focus of the world leaders as they make their way to the summit?
Currently, we are having a couple of challenges globally. First, for me, is environment, climate change. When you say climate change, somebody may think you're looking for comfortable weather. No, climate change is affecting agriculture. And we, as Ghanaians, is an agrarian economy. And so anything that will go and affect the basis of our growth, we have to worry about it. And these are some of the things that I would expect that leaders going forward will speak to it. Global warming. If global warming is becoming a challenge in the cold areas and they are suffering, the reactions which may take effect in some of the natural bodies, maybe the water bodies, I believe it may not be too healthy. We also don't live. Today we live in a global world. Tomorrow you may find yourself in another country. I may find myself in another country, and I may be affected by whatever is going on there. So for me, climate change is a very crucial matter that we have to look at because it is affecting our agrarian life. It is affecting the crops we grow. Times that you expect rains to fall, that will feed on the farms. It's not happening. Energy. Some of us who are using hydro, if you do not get a certain amount of water, it is going to affect our energy production, and so it is going to affect our economy. These are things that we have to be very much focused on and ensuring that it is done. Besides the systematic bureaucratic arrangements where we have to ensure that the fiscal policies are effectively, where nobody is just allowing papers to sit on their desk and not performing or not working on time, where we are not putting up policies that will not allow maybe the monetary arrangements to be a bit fluid. And then believe that currently, I just had it, this is off the cuff, that the dollar is more, the CFA in Cote d'Ivoire is quite playing its strength very well with the dollar, and so people are beginning to trade in that currency back in La Cote d'Ivoire. This is just some matters that are happening. How can we work on some of these things? These are all issues that are affecting. For me, I'm not surprised there's a World Economic Forum is coming into West Africa, putting us together in a pool, our economy as neighboring countries in ECOWAS. We're numbering close to 200+ million, and that is a huge market. If ECOWAS is able to implement the protocols very well, free our borders, and then trade, intra-trade is going on very well, we are a force to reckon with. I'm not surprised EU is still sitting by us waiting to sign an EPA with us, because this is a huge market for market base for that. Of course they can take advantage of it. We need to take advantage of them as well, so we should not be shortchanging the negotiations.
Right, so we're still looking at a lot more issues currently on AM Talk, on AM Show. Please get interactive. We have the short code 1760, but also the platform, that is the page on Facebook, Join News on TV. As you get interactive, though, we have to take a short break. We'll still have with us Kwame Champong, Member of Parliament for Impriaso, but we'll be joined by Gilbert Ibrahim. He is an economist, and we'll be discussing a lot more on the World Economic Forum. And thereafter, we'll have to come down to Ghana again and look at the subject of the economy and what the President has been saying, especially on his Ashanti regional tour. Do stay on. We'll be right back.
What can you do with your Mixi? And you? What about you? Mixi milk powder is rich in vitamins and minerals, essential for a healthy lifestyle. It is smooth and creamy. Mixi milk powder, health is a delicious step away. And now, introducing the creamy Mixi coffee.
Gilbert Ibrahim, yes, an economist, and he's also joining us. And how are you?
I'm good, by his
grace. The South Africans are voting, and they are voting to elect their leader, and they are voting in those provisional elections, so to speak. But how crucial is it that as a power in Africa, we still have it playing the role that it should play, especially years after apartheid?
When you take the South African story, it's crucial at this moment because of the death of Nelson Mandela, who we call a unifier. He is completely and permanently gone. So now the leaders it's so crucial. As they move beyond this level, then it will reinforce their leadership and control in the sub-region, on the continent. So it's crucial, very crucial. And South Africa, looking at their indicators of development within the African continent, it's one of the leading countries, that was in terms of development, that they are catching up far with the advanced world. So when it comes to the idea of leadership and how to elect them, it plays a role. The rate of success of it will trickle down to the continent, and then we can also look up to them. And I think South Africa has a huge task to prove to the world that indeed Africa has come to a level that we can manage our own affairs, and I think it's so crucial.
And we know that crucially they are very instrumental as far as the World Economic Forum is concerned. And for Africa, we have, yes, the World Economic Forum for Africa being held in Abuja.
That's right.
What do you make of the forum itself, and how do we need to have countries like South Africa and Nigeria being very instrumental?
When you take the forum, I will look at how it started and where it gets to, and then the summer annual meetings usually held in other parts of the world, apart from the main one that they have in January, and this is the 24th in Africa, and in Nigeria. If you look at the growth, the global growth companies that they put together within the 360, about 16 of them come from Africa. And out of the 16, 6 from Nigeria, 6 from South Africa. You have Mauritius, 1, and I think the other 3 come from the other country, but I know 6 are from South Africa and 6 are from Nigeria.
The other 3 come from Northern Africa, actually.
Yeah. And then and I think Kenya, and then Namibia. But I'm sure of the Mauritius is just 1 company. And when it comes to Nigeria, there are 6 companies that are classified as global growth companies. So if you look at these 2, South Africa and Nigeria, majority of the 16 companies come from, obviously, it's obvious that Ghana, there's no single company in there. So you realize that they are crucial, they are instrumental in this to bring the African continent together, to tap into this forum and see how it actually benefits the continent. And we as a people, by our level, micro, let me put it that we're considering the continent, we also look at how Ghana can also get into it. And how do we develop to grow? And when you look at the team, they're talking about fostering inclusive growth, creating jobs. So how do we benefit from this one? Do we have targets and plans to foster this inclusive growth? Because the world is growing at the level, and this forum brings the world to a platform where it's seen at one body. So if the other continents are growing, then the African continent is not catching up with the growth. Then obviously we are left behind. And when you look, definitely Africa is left behind on the global scene. Because if you take international business, for example, when they are talking about the tribe, there are 3 blocks. We have Europe, we have the Western world, and Japan. Let me put China and everything together as Asia. Africa is undefined regarding major blocks in international business. But this South Africa and Nigeria are pushing. When you say Africa is growing, I think a larger chunk of the growth are coming from these 2 countries. So their role in the forum is huge.
Mr. Champo, particularly when we have, well, the concern being raised. Now, if you take Nigeria, for example, well, you have countries in Northern Africa. You take Egypt, apart from the turmoil, now that they have their capitalization and their GDP going down over the last couple of years, you get to see that, well, unlike Nigeria, those countries perhaps don't have the gap between the rich and the poor, or don't have a larger chunk of their populations in extreme poverty. So that's those are the differences we have. And the criticism has always been that we have wealth that is concentrated in the hands of a few, especially in sub-Saharan Africa. And that's a difficulty as far as trying to create equity.
is concerned.
That it exists too, but I mean, when you talk about those our Northern African brothers, mind you, they trade more towards the Middle East, and a lot of them have their economies directed towards that angle. It's just Morocco and Algeria and Tunisia, mostly probably Morocco and Algeria are closer to the Mediterranean side with Europe. So and they have seemingly stable economies until the Arab Spring. They had seemingly stable economies. So the worry in Africa was more to the sub-Saharan, like you're saying, and the wealth. Naturally, if you go into every economy, wealth is not necessarily in the hands of every person. You have key power blocks who manage the system. However, the system is such designed to accommodate every person and get them to also earn and have their portions at their levels. There's kind of a class arrangement, and so that is how it is structured. However, it behoves on us, for instance, as public servants, to do our bit to help improve upon the public good. What is the public good? We look at this developmental social structure, maybe ensure that we have good public education that people can access and have access to. Beyond that, we have good health infrastructures where people can be attended upon. We have, it goes back to the same infrastructure subject we were having earlier on. There are good roads created, access. If I go to do my little bit as a farmer, and there's a good supply chain establishment where we have good access routes, somebody can commute with my produce to a consumer to another point. These are the systems that public officers like us must ensure are brought in the fore, so that everybody can have theirs. I cannot have the muscle of maybe a giant Heinz who have a huge
capital base. They have the capitalization.
They have franchises all over the globe.
They have the market,
and they have the market itself, and they determine. They have a share on the market. I do not own such, so I must go under them and ensure that I also get my own. Those things you can't change. They're established.
Well, that's very interesting, now, particularly when he makes mention of conglomerates and the role they play as far as the economics and competitions are concerned. Now, particularly when now the debate around West Africa is about the EPA, and now we have the World Economic Forum, really. The point is, Africa has now been seen, or is now seen as the next market. Okay, if it's now the next dominant market, how do we make sure that while we have the scramble for the market by the various major economies around the world, or economic blocks around the world, we also take advantage of it, not only necessarily being led by our government, but also our stakeholders, government, private sector, etc.
That's very interesting. If you open it wide, you see that the prospects are there, the market it's coming, and the world is lying. But then, if you look at Africa, I will use Ghana particularly, talking about the private sector coming, and then to support the public sector, to take advantage of it. The world sees Africa as a market, but what does Africa got to offer on the same market? Would we be receiving, buying always? And you and I know that growth, development, and this gap between the rich and the poor cannot be bridged if we don't get to creating of the job and bringing the necessary growth required. I think strongly, and I believe that Africa as a continent, Ghana in particular, is orchestrated to administrate and not to produce by the colonial administration. You will realize that success in Africa and Ghana is in governance, is in power, is in administration.
But that's negative.
That's negative.
Because it doesn't impact positively on the livelihoods of the people.
Thank you. So you realize that if you complete university, you are waiting to be appointed to administer somewhere, then your livelihood and your success is there. Hardly would you see people complete their universities, start from
well, that's why we have the politicians, the richest people in Africa.
So that means that as a continent, and Ghana in particular, we need to come with policy directions from education and every sector to change this perception because we are tailored
You're
to
talking about the whole generation.
That is a major thing. And until we get to a level that when we now would, you see why people will scramble whatever it takes to get power, to get an office, because that is where the success is. That's where the success story for the individuals, that's where you find it. But as a country and as a continent, what we celebrate when it comes, how can we increase production? I realize that how come some companies in Ghana are running for 20 years, 30 years, and not even a single one can be grouped into the global growth units. You know, they've been running for a period. And that means that productivity is not catching up to the level that we're supposed to get to.
I get your point. Now, we're talking about the debates now, being we haven't added value to whatever products we've generated or produced for years. Now, we see that the structures are too weak, we can compete. And if you look at what the variables are in Ghana, they're not different from what it is in Burkina Faso, etc. It's just that now we're advancing, so time is catching up on us. It will catch up on Burkina Faso perhaps maybe in 5 or 10 years' time. But the difficulty is, do we seem to be having the commitment as a continent that in countries that have the same economic threshold and variable indicators, that these are the commitments they would want to undertake, whether fronted by their government or by the capitalist economies or conglomerates or enterprises.
Some of us in Africa, we have gained, and it is a subject that has been on the corridors. We've gained political independence. We haven't fully won ourselves economic independence. That is a fact. We can't run away from that, because the value addition becomes in, and then you realize that you are still dependent on somebody. If you do not export your raw materials, some leading and emerging African countries, for instance, I'm happy with the style of Botswana today, where Botswana is auctioning her resources, natural resources, her diamonds back home. So if you want to buy Botswana diamonds, you have to fly all the way into Botswana. You try to create a niche for yourself, and that is what I believe going forward African emerging economies ought to do. For instance, he cited the Ghanaian situation where we're kind of producing a lot of human resource that is geared towards a system. I mean, it is not, I'm not surprised, because Ghanaians have produced a lot of legal brains.
He's even saying that it's an African situation.
No, that is quite subjective, you may have to say. But I go on and say that we've produced, for instance, legal brains that have helped in other sister African countries shape their legal systems and legal structure. That is maybe a plus for Ghanaians. But how are we identifying that and improving upon it and adding more value, ensuring that our educational system maybe becomes, for instance, the best in Africa? If that is the kind of economy we want to run, because education itself is business. We sit here, we're writing examinations across the oceans to the United Kingdom.
These days.
It's these days, and it's a huge chunk of money. It's a business for them. So how are we looking to develop our educational structures to make it that attractive? For instance, when we had our cardio center in Kolebu and it started serving other people beyond the borders of Ghana, people have been coming in as a result of the center. A lot of people are coming in. We cannot rub shoulders when it comes to tourism with maybe East and Southern African areas, because those economies have developed tourism. It is more or less the stay of the economy. It's not all of them who have got resources like we do, like Kenya and the rest. Okay, but even in Kenya, you will still have to go and talk about the same gap between the rich and the poor, and even in some of the Eastern African countries. But when we come to Ghana, I think we can do better. I think we can do better. There's more room for us to enhance what we've been able to do so far. One, we talked about value addition. We may not have enough population as Nigerians may have. Nigeria, I see as a big brother in Africa, and it is so because, one, it is rich in natural resources, and it is rich in human resources as well, because it has the market. Nigeria can decide to stop. Nigeria is playing the big brother, and I'm not surprised when it comes to the EPA and saying I'm not signing.
Because they have the market.
It has the market.
They have the clout.
They have it.
They have oil.
That's what I said. It is got it. So Nigeria can pull all of us around. I mean,
whether you like it or not, some must lead and others must follow, because that based on natural creation, you can't.
That brings my mind to the subject of how crucial are economic blocks now in the current world order as far as trade is concerned. Europe has now consolidated itself in such a way that it has made impact for decades. Okay, with fact the ASEAN countries also trying to make efforts to try to see what their consolidation will be. China, a huge.
And even the BRICS, the emerging economies.
Yes, of course.
Brazil,
yes. Now, if we see the current state of the world now, what should be the new thinking for Africa?
You see, with Africa, I think currently, what Africans should do is to cut your niche for yourself, and then we have to get to know our potential, which we know. We don't have to go back to the drawing board again. We know.
Because I was just about to tell you, we know.
We know.
We know it. So, we know it by heart.
So when we now want to come in-house, develop it and make it competitive as a continent, you see, African leaders must help make Africa competitive on the global market. That's the point. Otherwise, and when we're able to achieve that competitiveness, then we're able to really develop our resources. Then we can have a say within. For example, if ECOWAS wants to have any dealings with Europe, Europe is made up of a couple of countries, and we're not talking about poor countries. Now, just imagine Africa, Ghana, goes to sit on the European decks to negotiate on anything. Look at the weight of Ghana and look at the weight of Europe. Obviously, they will point out most of the things that we think are good for us, but a lot of them will be to their advantage when it comes to this kind of negotiation. So, Africa must really take our resources, develop them, and make them, put them to a level that the world would want them, and they need them. They will come for them. Then we have the advantage to harness the gains within.
How do we do that? You know, the point
we can do that, for example.
I have heard it all over.
Yeah, but
for a decade and a half now, I've heard all this talk about we need to develop and add value. What do we need to do?
What we need to do is that the few industries that are around productivity, I mean, we don't need to create new ones. Even the current program, there are Ghanaians who run these companies, and there are Ghanaians who work there. Just increase productivity. Complete, for example, cocoa. We have cocoa processing unit. The silos are not completed all these years. They are still standing there. What happens if the management of cocoa processing with government complete them and store them there? That we don't export even one unit of it until it is processed. We add value. Jobs are created. And by the time we fill the silos, we would have taken over, and then that would mean that we decide where it goes. All the gains will stay. Then we don't take any timber out in the log form. Go to the port. You see them still. We still take timber out in the logs form, and that is creating jobs somewhere again. And so it's simple policy that no log leaves this country until it's processed into a fine wood that it goes to where it's supposed to go.
Mr. Chairman, do we have the guts to be taking such perceived protectionist approaches?
If I'll come in briefly, it's not protecting because if you look at even the...
It depends on how the other trading blocks will see it.
For example, we created a free zone. What are the gains of the free zone?
Okay.
Free zone is supposed to create jobs and process. And then until it moves from the zone, they are not taxable. If you process and bring it back into the economy, you excuse a few taxes. If you decide to take it out...
We know that that's how it works. For now, let's take, for example, China. Until the last decade, they never opened up to anybody. But then they opened up to expertise and technology.
That's right.
They consolidated what they knew.
They identified their strengths.
So by the time everybody saw,
they were
China,
out there. They were chasing after everything.
Yes.
And that is China for you. That's what I talked about Nigeria.
Well, is it because
China,
they have the population?
They have the population. They have the
and
economy.
so Nigeria also has a population.
Just like the way America can say that yes, this is the land America. And
but we have countries like Singapore, We also have Singapore. We also have the other Scandinavian countries like Norway, Sweden, Denmark. They are very small. They are very small populations, but they have one of the highest GDPs around the world.
The geography of those countries also helps them a lot. If you look at a country like Singapore, how Singapore is situated, Singapore is not as large as Ghana, and then there was some consistency. You talked about the African situation. I mean, I know our time is up, but here we've had political interferences which have not allowed us to grow the way we ought need to grow.
You're talking about political interference.
Yes.
China, they've been under the communist rule for years. Now, if you take the other countries that you mentioned, Singapore, or you even take the Middle Eastern countries apart from oil
continuity. I'm talking here about consistency.
And continuity. And what we do with that very consistency.
And how do we do with it? What do we learn out of it? Just that we came out of the military regime and started this 1992 process. Here we find ourselves having this conversation. We have created vehicles that have enabled individuals who have the wherewithal talent to go out there and risk to create enterprises. And today we have a couple of private television stations. We do not only watch the Ghana Broadcasting Corporation, again, the Ghana television alone.
So you're saying private enterprise?
Private enterprise.
Creating the leeway, creating the atmosphere.
Exactly. So once you have consistency and then you have a set out path, then you know you are on a journey. Then you can go.
You're not only a member of parliament, I think you're a businessman. Okay, so your wrap-up comments then.
As the forum, the World Economic Forum, you see, there are a lot of things we can learn there, and then when we bring them back home and support businesses. And I believe in this public-private partnership stuff. It's one of the best to move Ghana in particular forward.
Not to be rude here. That creation of the World Economic Forum, where you have academia, you have businessmen, you have politicians.
As observers.
That's what I'm saying. Everybody sits there. You hear people's research findings, how people's success stories commenced. It is healthy because we also must learn. And then we bring it back home and see how we can domesticate, if I'm allowed to say so.
Our system.